There have been a number of heroes in cinema that have been designed to capture the imagination, to capture um, a sense of adventure and a sense of danger. This goes back to early days of just basically literature. I mean, the stories of whether it's Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer, um, Huck Huck Finn on the Mississippi, later on down the line into Kurtz going downriver, um, into the radio serials of the early 20s and 30s, The Lone Ranger, Hopalong Cassidy. These serial dramas that would find themselves in early films. Flash Gordon, a number of different stories with a hero that would fight all kinds of evil or just black hatted opponents. In the late 70s, with the success of Star Wars, with the success of Jaws and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg came together to form one of the great, in my opinions, one of the great American heroes, a quintessentially American story called Raiders of the Lost Ark. Today, in 2023, we see the fifth, possibly and hopefully the last entry in that series, as we follow an 80-year-old Dr. Henry Jones, Indiana Jones, on an adventure that, in a weird way, brings together everything that has come before in his life and the four films that have built up to this. Now, I am an Indiana Jones fan. I love the films. I never watched the Young Indiana Jones television show. The idea that somebody other than Harrison Ford playing Indiana Jones never appealed to me. But through three films in the 1980s, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and that was the title, Raiders. It's not Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's Raiders of the Lost Ark, 1981. 84, I think 84, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade in 1989, and in the 2000s, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Today we have James Mangold's interpretation of the final years of Indiana Jones's adventuring, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. And I gotta say, this is not a great film, but it is a wonderful little send-off of this character. It's a nice little moment of wrapping up everything and giving him some semblance of happiness and tying up things. It might be a little bit too sentimental. It might be a little bit too pat for some audiences, but for somebody who's been following this story for 40 years, it seems to be a wonderful little closure to those of us who have been here for this long, who have watched it from the time we were 6, 7, 8 years old until the old men that we are now. So I gotta say, this new film is it's a welcome end to this story, and I thought it was really well done. So I'm interested in hearing your opinion and your relationship to this film series, Mr. Chavez, because in looking at it, I can't help but think there's a distance for you, seeing as how you didn't necessarily grow up with this in the same way that I did, or it seems like timing is everything across the board. So when did you come to this series, and how do you feel about it in total, including this last film, this fifth film?
I was small when I saw Raiders,
Mm-hmm.
and I was small with Temple of Doom, and I think I had like some kind of comic book or some kind of thing of Temple of Doom. It was I think it was like a comic book or it was kind of magazine or
Hmm.
something. Um,
There was all kinds of knowing the Lucas and Spielberg relationship. There is no doubt that it was a comic book or a short novel or whatever that was designed for kids. Lucas, especially with Star Wars, really knew how to market shit and take advantage of the opportunity to put this in everybody's home. So yeah, if not a comic strip, definitely a young adult novel, I imagine.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I was small. Um, and so it was kind of like, okay, watched. And then Raiders got more. And then I remember when Last Crusade came out, that was like a thing with Connery and all that.
Hmm.
The fourth film I never watched. Um, I went on the ride at Disneyland and I liked the design, the look, the production value of the ride itself, and the lighting and all that. And they captured kind of the pop culture significance of Indiana Jones. And if you go to these like summer festivals when you want to pay for overpriced fucking food truck stuff and watch a movie and hang out or whatever, Raiders of the Lost Ark would always be on rotation, and that's the one I've seen the most.
Yeah.
And then now, I guess you're the one who told me that they were making another one, and we're in this time of these dying pop cultural heroes in recent cinema memory. So it's like Logan, Wolverine,
Yeah.
Iron Man, Black Panther, James Bond, Han Solo, Princess Leia, Luke Skywalker. So I was kind of like, no, John Wick, spoiler alert.
Hmm.
So I'm like, oh, maybe he's gonna die. And obviously this movie just came out, so you know, listen to this at your own fucking risk.
Hmm.
You know
Well,
what
we'll
you're
we'll
doing.
tell you a
Um,
point to turn off. I think we'll stick spoiler free
the,
until a certain point in the
the,
podcast, and then
well,
we'll,
this I'm about to fucking talk about it. I mean, where else are you gonna go?
you
My
could go
point is,
go ahead.
no,
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. I disagree.
All right.
Spoiler alert now. Either you fucking listen or you don't. Or listen later and do whatever the fuck you're gonna do with your life.
So be
Um,
forewarned that we're going to talk about every aspect of the film,
yes,
and
yes.
yeah. All right.
Um, so having spoken about all these people who die, I'm like, okay, uh, he should die. Indiana Jones should die, and it'll be a good end. But his ending is actually, it's not that he should die; it's that he should live in the present. That's his kind of full circle thing. Stop living in the past, live in the present.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Spoiler alert: he didn't die. Um, and so it's a nostalgia film, and it's good. I think it did a good job as a nostalgia film, the way that Top Gun Part Two. I think Top Gun Part Two relied more heavily on nostalgia, um, and I think it did it very, very well for what it is.
Yeah.
Whether you like the original or whatever the fuck, however you sit on that,
Mm-hmm.
um, for what it did, I think Top Gun did it very well. This one, I don't think it did it as well, but I think it did accomplish that, and it did bring it full circle. Um, so in that aspect, I enjoyed it. What I was curious about those because you told me about the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you told me that it was coming out,
Yeah.
and I said, "Oh," and then you said that there was all this fucking backlash.
Yeah.
Um, and I didn't know anything about this because I didn't even know. anything about the movie at all. So much less the backlash.
It amazes me that somebody who is on social media as much as you are, and looking at videos and manages to somehow be completely unaware of controversies that are existing in this world. That's amazing how it's a real testament to algorithms and how
Yeah.
how that shit really is narrowed towards exactly your interests, and anything that falls outside of it you can, because it's amazing to me how little you know about, and this is not an insult, this is just because I obviously know very little about the shit that you're watching. It's like wow. I think part of what I'm saying here is we do get caught up in our own world, and we start to wonder, how the fuck is everybody not aware of the bullshit that is going on right now? I think
And how much of the bullshit is real?
exactly. I think
Because
with something like this, there's the idea. First of all, when you play around with a series over 40 years, it doesn't matter the story that is being told so much as how it is being formatted for the times in which it is being seen. So there are a lot of people of my age who are going to look at the Indiana Jones films, and they're going to look at Jones himself as a character that can't become a certain thing. And part of the controversy right now is almost handing over this film to a female character in the story that takes a prominent role, a goddaughter of Jones's, who is herself an archaeologist, but doing it as a means of a completely materialistic and money seeking aspect of grave robbery. Now, don't get it wrong. Indiana Jones is a grave robber himself.
well,
And
yeah, it's always played with that.
it's always played with that, yeah. But he's
It's
noble.
always played with the
There's a nobility.
relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, sure. It's always been the relationship. This is archaeology. This is the relationship of colonial grave robbing
Hmm.
/ treasure hunting and the modern field of archaeology. And the question it's always been with this series is like, do the artifacts belong to museums or in their countries of origin, or should they stay buried? And this is also tied to like Nazi hunts for ancient artifacts
Hmm.
for either fiction or fact. Fiction being supernatural power, right?
Yeah.
And the fact being to somehow legitimize their Aryan racial theories, with Himmler's, as I mentioned, in a totally different, in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, with Enter the Void, Himmler and the Ananurva is this kind of racial theory of looking for ancient proof that would somehow validate their view that there was an ancient Aryan Indo-European civilization that was the master race, that basically all great achievements in human history can be led back to them. And we're going to use this as a pretext to invade and go discover and go do all this bullshit.
Sure.
This has always been tied to Indiana Jones to begin with. But before we even get into that, it's like the idea that there is a controversy over this new movie is kind of, is there really a controversy over this new movie? Is it? I feel kind of clickbaited because not like you did it on purpose, but like you made it sound like there was all this shit in this movie. And so I went looking. I went like,
Well,
hoping.
that's part of the problem, is that I went in with the same attitude as you, because I was just telling you what I was reading online. And the fact of the matter is that the internet has provided the opportunity for everybody to have an opinion that is weighted, and these opinions are allowed to decide the fate of something. This film is being looked at as a major box office problem because it's not making the money that it was for a $295 million film before advertising to break even. It has to make like 3 or 4 times that. So it has to make $1 billion. And it doesn't seem likely that this is going to do that. Now, there are so many theories on why that is. There's an idea of toxic masculinity. There's an idea of Indiana Jones being an outdated, white colonist, grave robbing, whatever you want to call this, in addition to the other films and the white hero. So there's all kinds of different aspects to it that in 2023 are problematic and did exist in 1981, but were not as pronounced and were not as loud and overpowering as they are here. I watched the movie, and aside from going from film to digital and the way a lot of it looks, I didn't have a real problem with this film. The problems that I had were, I imagine what Spielberg would have been able to do with it, but then we saw what Spielberg did with the fourth film. This is a much better. You haven't seen it. You will see it, and then you'll be able to comment on that. But
yeah, we'll talk about
it. We'll talk about it because we're going to be doing multiple episodes on. We're going to do it 3 episodes on this film. But Dial of Destiny on the series. Dial of Destiny is what we're talking about today. Elements of the other films will bleed into this episode because there's no way of talking about this film. There's no way of talking about this character historically without delving into, or at least brushing up against, stories that have built into the character that he is. What you're looking at is a late 30s Indiana Jones into a late 70s 80-year-old Dr. Jones. Harrison Ford is 80 years old at this point. And as you watch it, there has to be a certain level of disbelief. You have to be able to run with the idea that an 80-year-old man is going to be able to do the shit that he does in this film. It's impossible.
Because there was no level of disbelief in the first one. Because that was all realistic.
Yeah, exactly. Running from a giant a giant ball chasing, just the ridiculousness of that. Or in the second film, jumping out of an airplane, landing on the Himalayas, and riding a goddamn life raft.
Inflatable boat.
Exactly. There is a sense of, let's put our minds away and let's just have fun with the ideas that are trying to be expounded in these stories. So I don't watch it.
Put our minds away and comment on it online.
Yeah, exactly. One thing I will say about this film that I'm happy that they didn't do. Every Indiana Jones film, I've always said, and I've said it with many of my friends who love these movies, guys that I grew up with, guys that are around my age, that we've talked about these films. One of the greatest things about Harrison Ford is nobody takes a beating like Harrison Ford on screen. Every single film in the series, with the exception of this one, Harrison Ford fights hand-to-hand with one guy, and he gets the shit kicked out of him before ultimately knocking that person out, or,
a machine destroys the guy.
Yeah. Propellers cut a giant bald-headed bastard up into pieces. It's always there. He's physically formidable, but a lot of what he does in these films are the intellect of, some of it is just being smart enough to do this at this moment, or to see a way out, to figure out how you're going to bust through a wall, or be able to read the codes, or whatever. I mean, this is...
Or John Williams' music inspires him, even though he can't hear it.
He can. I'm sure he hears it. On some level, he hears it. This shit's been 40 years. Exactly.
So here we go.
One of the great score. One of the most iconic scores, and one of probably the most iconic composer in the history of cinema. And this is no slight to Ennio Morricone or any of the others, but
I had that conversation within the last couple months.
Mm-hmm.
Is like, is he the most iconic? This is a debate for another episode, but which we can exploit.
Yeah.
buymeacoffee.com/WatchThis.
Yeah.
And so if he's not the most, he is definitely one of the most, and he's got so many of those fucking Star Wars alone.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like
Shit, Jaws. Yeah, of
fucking
course.
Jaws.
Yeah.
And so, yes, John Williams is in the psyche.
Mm-hmm.
John Williams is in the culture. And I've been to those fucking Hollywood Bowl. I've been to like several of those Hollywood Bowl John Williams Philharmonic shows, and they're great. People take fucking like lightsabers, and it's a fucking thing, and they're like, it's crazy.
It's a real nerd fest.
Cool.
God bless them. Yeah, they love it. I'm with them.
It's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's get back to the element of, because you had said that people were having also a backlash because of this woke element to it.
It's very strange because I didn't sense any of that in there. Because
it's not.
It's not. I think people are searching and they're inserting and they're putting their own prejudices and their own expectations into something that doesn't exist. And I think this film is I think this film is par for the course, and it's very much in keeping with the Henry Jones that we've known over these 40 years. And it's difficult to see your heroes get old in this manner, but he's still vital. There's still the strength of character and the purpose. Yeah.
We've been seeing that. We've seen that with fucking Rambo. We've seen that with Rocky. We've seen that with all these fucking characters that I talked about how they died. It's kind of it's interesting if you kind of look at these different points of like what could it be, right? Is it the wokeism? Is it the strong female aspect to it? And okay, the woke thing, it's kind of like I'm sitting there, and then after I'm thinking about it, and I watched it with Leslie, and I don't want to speak for her, but Leslie, we talked when we've done that idea of like the films that defined you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We did an episode on your films. We did an episode on my films, and the idea that we are not the sum of, but we are definitely in places where we can track the forms of media that spoke to us, and that leads us to who we are. And then my question of like, can we program our future through movie magic, right? Can we program our future movie manifestation by deliberately choosing things so we can go in a different direction? Raiders of the Lost Ark is in her film biography. It's one of the things that she would put on her list, on her episode.
Really?
The Raiders.
That's interesting. I wouldn't see that, but okay.
Which I mean, loves to travel, anthropology, sociology, interested in a guy that is interested in old things, being me, religion, all that stuff. Kind of a jerk. I don't own a whip, but whatever. Moving on.
Yeah.
The woke thing, because we were talking about it, and I'm like, well, maybe Ben Shapiro or Jordan Peterson or Patrick Bet-David or these gurus, these right-wing fucking gurus think it's woke. Or, maybe it's to quote Peterson, this postmodern bloody Marxist wokeism that's going to bring down the Western civilization. Maybe it's that to them. or is it just fucking anti-Disney backlash because of DeSantis and his Florida corner of the culture wars? You know what I mean? Like, is it just people are just picking at things? And I'm like, well, what in it could be perceived as woke? And I mean, there's a line where the female character talks about the goddaughter. She talks about I don't remember what the character's name is.
Fiona.
She talks about capitalism. There's a line. It's like a throwaway line, but she's
her name is Elena, I think. Wait a minute. Yeah.
Elena. Yes. Yeah. Elena. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She's like, well, they're going over this. The MacGuffin in the film is Archimedes. The dial of destiny. Mm-hmm. It's this thing that supposedly the mathematician Archimedes, the Antikythera, it's supposedly this. What it is in reality is like an orrery. It's a machine that can show or trace the position or movement of planets, right?
Yeah.
And it had like an old gear, and there are old artifacts that are like that. But supposedly it's like a time travel device. So that's what they're after, because that's the.
It finds fissures in time. It like Time Bandits. It finds these openings where you can travel from one time period to another. Yeah,
it finds like a Stargate type of bullshit. So that's the Maltese Falcon.
Yeah.
Because I didn't realize that. I'm watching this movie as a side note, and I'm like, this is fucking Buster Keaton. This is Humphrey Bogart. This is Sierra Madre. This is African Queen. This is Casablanca. And so it was weird to see it like, and kind of appreciate that years fucking later, because I never was like that into it. Obviously, I didn't know these connections as a child, but even like later on, I guess I wasn't really looking at it that way. It was kind of always like, even Raiders to me was like, if it was on, it was kind of in the background. So, all right. So then they're at this auction in Morocco, in Tangier. And it's like, well, he stole it.
Wait a minute. I'm losing you. Hey.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Are you okay?
No, you sounded muffled for a little bit there. I mean, that's the problem with doing this shit over a phone. So it was like you went underwater for a minute there. So I lost what you were saying. But you were saying they're at a hotel in Tangiers, and they're doing this auction. So it's an illegal auction that she has been arrested for in the past. And she's a grave robber. She's looking for $1. She's Belloc from the first film. This is what she's doing. She's highest bidder. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right. So the idea is like, okay, you stole it. No, you stole it. Blah blah blah. And then she's like, then I stole it. It's capitalism. It's called capitalism. Like you said, she's all about the money, supposedly, right? As a character. And I say supposedly because that's also part of the story.
Yeah.
And she says it without any irony. And what I took from it is that was it Disney inserting that line in? Disney as a fucking like example of fucking capitalism itself, trying to insert that line to like supposedly like brainwash people against capitalism? I doubt it. I think it was fucking it's trying to be funny. These are comedies. These are action fucking comedies. And remember, Indiana Jones is comedy.
They very much go for the joke in every film. Every film there's humor in these films. So yeah.
And it's what the character thinks she's about. And even if there was some level of like critique in what she's saying, she's also from the late 60s. So, take all of that with it. Then I was like, what you talked about, what you mentioned with the strong female lead, and this takes us back to the episode that we did on Mad Max. And that, if you want to hear that, you have to go back to Libsyn. You have to go to our Libsyn, because Apple only keeps like 100 episodes or whatever. But it's a good episode, as all of them are.
That's a damn good episode, yeah.
Buymeacoffee.com/watch RickRamos. And so Mad Max Fury Road, there was supposedly all this backlash about that. And it's like, well, is it the red pill, incel, Andrew Tate internet that thinks this? At its most cynical, it's like 4chan type trolling, and at its most sincere, it's just fucking paranoid. Like, the fanboys can be mad at the fucking girl boss, but what about fucking Raiders?
Well, that's what I was going to mention. I mean, it's like, you can definitely say so Kate Capshaw in Temple of Doom was grating and annoying and very difficult to stomach. The woman who played Elsa in Last Crusade, she was negligible. You know, I mean, she was there to be pretty and what it was. But in that film, that wasn't the relationship. The relationship was a father and son story, okay? But if you go back to Raiders, that was a very strong female character. Marion Ravenswood was a woman who had gone through life looking at either the choices that she made or the choices that were made for her. There's a little bit in the woke era that says he was a bit of a I don't know if I would say a pedophile, but he definitely took advantage of a young woman and
statutory rapist. That's the very least,
basically. Right? Yeah, and he says, you knew what you were doing. I fell in love with you, so there was a back and forth. But
because she says I was a child.
I was a child, yeah, and
she would have been like around probably what, like 15 years old?
And he would have been probably 19 or 20,
mid-20s.
Yeah. Probably.
Oh, he was
not too far from the relationship he had with Carrie Fisher during Star Wars. Don't want to say too much about that, but I mean, these things happen. These things, I don't want to be.
Yeah, but you age differently on Endor. It's not the same.
I don't want to be cited and fucking canceled for being dismissive. Pig. But I am a fucking pig. But whatever. What do you want from me? I'm part of the patriarchy, and I got no control over this shit. So these are our heroes. What do you want from me? But in the context of the story, this Elena Shaw character is very much in keeping, and it's bookended. Raiders, yes. Dial of Destiny, it's bookended with two strong female characters. There have been some reviews that I've read where it said they don't make her character very likable. She's not very, well, you know what? By the end, I think they give you a good understanding of what her life has been as she has seen what this device, this dial of destiny, the Archimedes, dial, has done to her father, how it has driven him crazy. I think that because it's not her movie, you don't get into her mindset as much as if it had been Elena Shaw on the Dial of Destiny. You know.
So why does she have to be likable?
And that's the truth. But at the end, she's noble. She cares about her godfather. She brings him back from the brink. She has enough sense to know that he cannot make a choice based on emotion, which is really interesting because that's the label that they put on women quite a bit. And that he belongs of a different time, that he belongs, by the end of
in the present.
Yeah. This movie is really interesting because it's an old, tired, beaten down, alcoholic Indiana Jones who has fucked up his life to a certain degree. And the marriage that we saw at the end of The Crystal Skull has it's disintegrated. He's no longer with Marion. They're opening that shot as he's old. He's in his underwear. he's falling and asleep in front of the TV, and he's the angry old man in the building. He takes a bat to somebody's door and just, tells them to shut the hell up. It's 8 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah, with the moon landing.
With the moon landing, yeah.
That's
So,
the foreground to them, and it's the background to him.
And it's really interesting because it's the moon landing sets into, it's, I don't know if I would call it subtle, but it's definitely a statement of he's being left in the past. It's an even more powerful statement of you are out there playing in the dirt, trying to discover your pots and your little trinkets to understand history when we're moving forward. We're already conquering new worlds. We're doing something that and it's addressed later on. What would Archimedes have thought? I don't remember what his answer to that question was, but he's a man. He's a man out of time. He's always been a man out of time, but it's extreme now, especially since you're coming to the end of your life.
Right. And that's the thing. It's like we have a series about an aging adventure archaeologist who is himself now relegated to the past.
Yeah.
And so he's not only getting old, he is running out of time. And then now you have this clock motif, right?
Yeah.
And the time travel, the watch, the Antikythera. Even the parade was to me like a going backwards in time. At one point there's a parade that it's like a chase scene and he's captured. But first it's you start off with him waking up, and it's you have all this, you have like David Bowie, you have the Beatles playing. It's 1969, the moon landing. But then once you get into the parade, there's all this Americana in that sequence. Just even with the baseball bat that he takes, and then you have this parade with all this Americana, and they're chasing him. You have a convertible, and a man is snatched out of the convertible, and a woman is left in the car screaming. And I'm like, they're going back to the 60s. That's Kennedy.
Yeah.
He gets on a horse.
Hard to miss that one, yeah.
And he gets on a horse, and now he's running with a train, and it's like on the subway, because this is New York. And I'm like, now it's a Western. He's going back in time with Americana, with the train, with the cowboys, all that shit. You have the Nazis, but you also have the American Nazis as collaborators. And you're going back in time with that. George Lincoln Rockwell of the American Nazi Party, he had just been killed 2 years before the action of this film. He was killed in the Summer of Love, basically. I think it was in August. Which I think there's a focus on August 1939 in this film, but also August of, I think August 69 here. And the idea of both of these men, this Nazi aeronautics scientist who's working with the CIA, but going off on his own to try to go back in time to kill Hitler, so that ultimately they could have a better outcome for the Third Reich. And Werner von Braun, the Operation Paperclip. The CIA imported all of these Nazi scientists to create the American space program.
Yeah.
This is like documented shit. And ultimately, in the space race against the Soviet Union, you've got that. You mentioned the being out of time aspect. So it's like going back in time in that parade symbolically, like with the Americana, but also being out of time and going out of time with a time machine. The idea of, at first they're after the Lance of Longius, the spear of destiny, the spear that supposedly pierced Christ on the cross. But then it shifts, which is interesting, the spear of destiny, but then it shifts to the Antikythera, this clock-like mechanism. Like you said, it's the feeling of being in the wrong time travel, history, archaeology, fighting old wars, fighting the Nazis. The whole question of like, if you could go back in time, would you kill Hitler? That's in this. Trying to change the past.
Yeah, but
looking
why
backwards.
trying to kill Hitler? I mean, we'll get to that, but we got to come back to
you don't have
that.
to ask why, but you don't have to ask why. I mean, everyone it's understood why to go back Hitler.
Not in this movie.
Well, I just mentioned earlier what it was is that he wants to go back to kill Hitler in order to change the outcome so that they wouldn't lose World War II, so that the Nazis would have won.
Sure. My mistake.
That's the reason why that Nazi wanted to kill Hitler, because he thought that Hitler fucked up. But in general, when the question is, would you go back to kill Hitler? Everyone knows why.
Yeah.
And it's a sense of like, well, old men die in the past. You don't need to fucking be an archaeologist. You don't need to be a fucking time traveler. All you have to do is get old and start looking in that rearview mirror more than you look forward, and you will die in the past. And Helena, the character, is like, no, you need to fucking like keep moving, and you need to be in your own time. And there's a line, "Yesterday belongs to us," that the Nazi says. Mads Mikkelsen's character says. And it's such an interesting line, because it's like, well, today this, tomorrow that, right?
Yeah.
But yesterday, to be able to go back and change something, and that feeling of being so connected, like things do feel, they can be years ago, decades ago, but they feel like yesterday, just like it was yesterday, as the saying, as the cliche goes, right?
Yeah.
But it's so far away and you can't change it. But that's what we fucking think about. That's what we fixate on, are the things that happen that we cannot change. And so we start to dig into that, and the present is passing us. And pretty soon the future becomes the past also, and then we die. That's, the message. And to me, that's more powerful than had he just died. Had he come to terms with all of his mistakes, and then, okay, now I'm going to die or whatever. The idea that, now what? I'm back. And then the ending, and the book ending with the Marion character, and then the kind of the references to the first one, the quotes, where to kiss and what does it hurt and all that. And so it can be seen as maybe cheesy and sentimental, but it's also I think there's an underlying like terror there. Which is like, now it's kind of like you're although it's with familiar face and with familiar people, it's like the next adventure is to live today into tomorrow. And it's scarier than anything that Indiana Jones has ever faced, because Indiana Jones always has historical perspective.
And that's a very important aspect of this film, is that learning from the past, paying attention to what has come before. This is his third chance with Marion. There was the young childhood romance. Then it went into them coming together again in Raiders. That falling apart, her going away, raising their kid without telling him. You're going to find that out in the in the fourth film, and then coming back together and spoiler alert again, the disintegration of this marriage when he is unable to be there to comfort her with the death of their son. The Mutt character, Shia LaBeouf's character from Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I thought that was really touching. I thought that was really, because I was wondering, how are they going to address this? What are they going to do? And it would be easy to kill off the character, but to kill off the character as a plot device in order to distance them from each other, that was very realistic. That was very honest. I thought it was very telling because it lent a certain sense of emotional difficulty that Indiana Jones is the character that we had never seen in any of the four previous films. It's strange that in this film, maybe it's not strange. Maybe it's the logical conclusion of a human story in that at 80 years old, you would be looking back at the mistakes of your life and trying to figure out how the hell is it that I continue to fuck this up? And that I have to be there for her. I have to be able to comfort her, to be able to, it's my son too, but we need to be here for one another in order to continue moving forward. I thought that was really touching. I thought it was powerful. Harrison Ford is a strange kind of actor because if you look at it for what's on screen, there doesn't seem to be a lot there. Harrison Ford has incredible star power, but he looks in almost every movie like he doesn't want to be there. Like he's just doing the job in a weird way. And I'm not saying this as an insult because it works for the character, It really does work for the characters that he does, where he's the smartest guy in the room and he hates doing what he has to do. He looks very tired in this film, but how would you not expect an 80-year-old man to look doing this after a lifetime? I mean, and then he touches on it. You weren't forced to drink the blood of Kylie, and you weren't forced to be tortured in this manner. I mean, I got pins in one ankle, and nothing. Everything hurts. Everything fucking hurts, and 30 years younger than that, I feel that sometimes. This is how this fucking story plays. But Harrison Ford as an actor is just, I think I'm looking, I did not watch the four earlier films before going to see this. I wanted to watch this film. That. Yeah. I wanted to watch this film completely cold. I haven't seen, when I moved back to Phoenix, I was going through basically a cinema study with my nephew. I was showing him films: Big Trouble in Little China, Escape from Escape from New York, The Thing. I was showing him Jackie Chan films, and we got to, I think it was Back to the Future, and then Indiana Jones. And I wasn't sure how he was going to react to any of these films, but it's a testament to how well made these films are and how they resonate, because even older audiences really embrace them in a very adventuresome way. I mean, there's you show this kind of shit to a 14-year-old kid, he's going to get excited because it's palpable on that picture. You're seeing something really incredible, and it's the inventiveness of the adventure, whether it's a giant rock falling towards you or, the Ark of the Covenant, and what happens when you open that up, or the Holy Grail, whatever. But I didn't want that. I wanted to go into this film watching it from the perspective of Indiana Jones in my memory. Mm-hmm. I wanted to see how much. These are experiments that you can only do once. You can only do it once. Yeah. So I asked myself, did I want to watch these films in succession and build towards this? Or did I want to rely on what I remembered about Indiana Jones and how much that sticks in my psyche. And I was amazed as I was watching it how much of the other films stuck in my mind. I mean,
They emerged.
yeah, they did, and they absolutely did. And it's really cool because, let's say, Indiana Raiders is, I think, 36. Temple of Doom is a prequel. They didn't want to deal with the Nazis, so they did it as a prequel, 35. Last Crusade is 38. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is like 56 or 57, somewhere around there. It's during the Cold War. This film is 69. The prologue of this film, though, is 44. It's near the end of the war. What I hadn't realized is that the first three films were not set during the American involvement in the war. The Nazis were just a figure in the war. World War II was going on, but the U.S. wouldn't be involved until late 41. So, I've always thought of these films as World War II films. They're not. They're pre-war. They are World War II films, but they're pre-American involvement in World War II. They're the building of the Nazis. They're the growing power of Hitler and the Nazi Party. And this film starts with the end of World War II. He's already gone after the Ark. He's already gone after and found the Ark. He's already gone after and found the Holy Grail. And they allude in the beginning that you're going after yet another biblical, the lance of, what was it called?
Longinus.
Of Longinus, which leads you, this is all in keeping. Longinus. This is all in keeping with the Indiana Jones story of religious relics and the power that they have to lead wars, to lead armies into battle. And you find out that that's not what this is. He discovers this device. He and this dopey friend of his, Basil Shaw, played by Toby, I can't remember his name, but they're on this adventure, and there's the de-aging CGI, which admittedly is a hell of a lot better than what Scorsese did three and a half years ago with it's much better.
That,
yeah. I have to go back and watch The Irishman again to see if it stands up, which I'm sure it does, but this is better. And it's interesting to see a young Harrison Ford, although he's older than those other films. That's a good 7 years past The Last Crusade. But you see that it's the constant adventure. It's, and then you jump ahead to 51, where Basil Shaw is going crazy by this device and wants it destroyed. Jones can't do that. The point that I'm trying to make with all of this is that the character exists in so many different timelines, and there's so many different aspects of who he is. And I gotta say that the filmmakers, Mangold in this film, Spielberg and the others, there was a very nuanced and really well directed growth of the character.
Yeah, and all these time periods, like as you say, from Hitler as Chancellor, like pre-World War II through World War II into the late 60s.
Yeah.
Post-war, which does that mean that the son dies in Vietnam, right?
Yeah.
Which is also like, as an undercurrent of kind of, if you're Indiana Jones, and you're fighting Hitler, that can seem like, well, this makes sense. If if it's Cold War and this idea, especially in the McCarthyistic kind of like idea of the Soviet Union and all that, then obviously it makes sense. Vietnam, more nuanced, more, what are we fighting for, right? Don't ask me, I don't give a damn. Next stop is Vietnam.
Yeah.
And to have to lose your son in that, it's kind of like, it's more cloudy. And as I said earlier, like, he has historical perspective in terms of his understanding of these relics and supposedly powerful, whatever. Obviously, he's facing challenges with now these are like weapons of mass destruction, right?
Yeah.
That in the hands of the Nazis that's it. But what I'm saying is that through all of these periods that you describe, it's like the future, the now going forward is more terrifying.
Yeah.
Even more I mean, the to live in a world where there is a tomorrow is actually scarier than a world where there is no tomorrow. Tomorrow is scary.
Yeah, because we don't know what it is.
If the world ends tonight, well, that's the horror, and then the world blows up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
If you already think the world ended, but we're still going to wake up in the morning, that's scarier. And then that's his next adventure, is the one that we never hopefully get to see on screen.
It's
unless they do one where they're trying to like break out of the retirement home, and then he has to go get his fedora.
I would have put it past them, but it's. See, this film sticks with you. This series sticks with you. This is Americana. This is who we are. This is there's an aspect to it. I mean, every culture, every society has its heroes. They have something that is ingrained in them that is designed to either push the status quo, push the idea of what it is to be American, or to jump on that sense of adventure. Indiana Jones is everything that we're taught about American will, American strength, while at the same time acknowledging the problems. I mean, look at one aspect of this film, and I'm not sure. Maybe this is part of the problem that they were talking about. The CIA plays an underlying prominent role here in adding to this problem of. I mean, it doesn't shy away from acknowledging that the United States government employed Nazi scientists in their race to win the space race.
Yeah.
It's there. I don't know if that would have been carried out with the Boy Scout that Spielberg is so many years ago.
That's a good question, because I mean, I have a strange view of. I don't know if it's strange or not, but I look at Spielberg and like part of me is just like, he's so fucking overrated. And look, like I think Jaws is a masterpiece.
Mm-hmm.
I love Jurassic Park. I think I can say that he is a master.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also something about it that I don't know what it is that prevents me from taking him seriously.
I think,
or in terms of like the next level.
Well, I think it's
maybe
the difference.
Not taking him seriously, but
well, it's the difference in our. It's a difference in our cultural, and I'm not talking specifically about race. I'm talking about the times in which we were raised and the attitudes that we have, the belief system that we have. He's a little bit too American Pie, Pat, nuclear family. There, if you watch his later films, there is a disintegration of that. There's I think he has too much of a sensibility of wrapping things up nicely. Terry Gilliam had a good quote when he talked about his version of Schindler's List,
Oh yeah, yeah.
where
I'm familiar with that.
and I think
Say it. Yeah.
Gilliam is correct in his description that Stanley Kubrick wanted it to be the horror show that the Holocaust was, a failure of humanity. Spielberg puts it out as the good in humanity conquering all.
A hero story.
Yeah, he wanted it to be a hero story when the Holocaust should have been anything but. If you're going to tell
Yeah.
that,
How many people were saved, and then millions of people weren't.
died, yeah.
Yeah.
So even in something like that, Spielberg wants to find the joy. He wants to find the
glass is
humanity.
half full.
Yeah, and there is something to be said about the humanity, to finding the positive humanity in a thing. But what a lot of people don't understand, or they don't want to admit or recognize, is that humanity is both sides of that. There is a positive and there is a negative to humanity. We do have that capacity to hurt each other and to do it in a means of a cold-heartedness designed to push your beliefs and your agenda. Private Ryan ties it up too cleanly. E.T. a little bit too cleanly. You want your people to suffer, but Spielberg wants it to work itself out in the end. And I will readily admit that's difficult for me. That's why I drift towards Scorsese. That's why I drift towards, filmmakers that are a little bit more, I guess, honest about the world that they come from. I'm really interested in seeing Meet the Fabelmans, because that's Spielberg's handling of his own parents' divorce. I watched the HBO documentary on Spielberg, which gave some background into his life, and then to see it put on screen, I'm really interested in that. It was near the end of the pandemic, and I was still a little bit nervous about going to movies, so I missed it. But I will catch it, and I think it's something that we're going to want to talk about, because Spielberg's in his late 70s at this point. We're talking, and you and I have talked off, Mike, about directors who are coming to an end in their career. Scorsese, Spielberg. I think De Palma is pretty much finished. Paul Schrader continues to make movies, but how long can that last? It's very interesting that we're seeing people that we can chart their filmography, and we can look at what they have done to what they're ending with.
Yeah.
These are beautiful statements of their personalities and who they are. Yeah.
Which was, how did you feel? Because there was a definite nostalgia, oh my God, when fucking John Rhys Davies appears.
I was thrilled and I was sad, because I could see him moving slowly. I could see, and you could see the age on him. And then I remember Salah from the first film, from the third film. I remember John Rhys Davies from that, and that's where I primarily know him from, even though I've seen him and I know him from other films. But he was so full of life.
Also from The Untouchables on TV. I don't know if you ever watched that.
He was on The Untouchables in TV?
Yeah. Yeah, he was he's the Scottish sergeant or whatever the fuck he is. Not sergeant. He's We worked with Elliot Ness.
I don't remember that at all.
Unless I'm fucking like.
I don't remember. I mean, what did they? Did they reboot the Untouchables for TV
Yeah,
back in the
in the
90s?
90s. Yeah.
No, see, I was in
Yeah,
college at that point.
William Forsythe was Al Capone.
See, I was in college at that point, and that was one of those syndicated shows that you would have had to have cable at that time, and there was a whole lot from 92 to 96. There was a whole lot that I missed. It's we've talked about that off mic, where you're at in life at a certain point means you miss out on a tremendous amount of things. There were a number of movies and television shows that I missed out on while I was in school. I didn't have cable. I didn't have that. It wasn't available to me.
Yeah, I didn't. My friend had cable. I didn't, but I think it was on regular. Out here, it was on regular TV, from what I remember.
Yeah.
And I just remember, yeah, he's Sean Connery's character, basically.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. See, I love him. I think in what I've seen him in, I've always, and it was striking to see him old like that, and it was striking to see Karen Allen old, because she was old in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. She was much older, but to see her like this, she's an old woman. And Harrison Ford is old, but he's constantly been in. He's making a movie every couple of years.
You're used to seeing him.
Mm-hmm. It's striking to see him.
We've already seen him come back in Blade Runner too.
Yeah, and that's it. So in that film,
and as Han Solo.
Yeah, so it's like he's somebody that's been with us. I think they did some really smart things in this movie. As a that argument that will never fucking die. I love the fact that he didn't. He played an old man with regrets. There was a sadness in the portrayal. There's regret, and this shit falls into my wheelhouse. This is my thing. This is what I love.
Yes,
this is what I love in
made
movies.
For you.
Oh, it's absolutely made
Served
for me.
You on a fucking rusty platter.
You could have made this fun. Dedicated to Rick. They could have had that dedication at the end or at the beginning for Rick, and it would have been like, yeah, motherfucker, it is for me. He is that character, and he does a fight scene in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and he gets the shit beat out of him, but he throws well too. This one, they were wise to have him just punch people and get the hell out of there. He doesn't take too many beatings in this one because, let's face it, that giant oak motherfucker, one smack and that guy would have killed him.
Yeah.
So they didn't do that. They kept it, and they wrote it in why they can't hurt him. They needed him. So, so they were smart about that. There were certain things about the film that really, really kept it in context. And Ford is not... I really like that Ford is not ashamed of who he is. He's old. He got on that horse,
Yeah, literally.
Yeah. I thought that sequence could have been handled a little bit better. And that was one of the few things that I really had a problem with. The level of CGI in this film in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull makes it difficult to watch it in the same breath as the first three films. The first three films have obvious model work. This one, I didn't believe that horse scene. But a lot of that chase through the streets of Tangier, I bought that. I don't know. I mean, what was your opinion on? I guess when you watch adventure stories now, you can't help but wonder, what's blue screen? What's green screen? What are they actually doing versus what is obviously fake?
And like you said, the face, you could tell that the work has gotten so much more. The fucking deepfake AI shit has gotten so much better on for uh for this film than The Irishman.
Mm-hmm.
That I mean, it's there. You can see it.
Yeah.
But you understand that this isn't something that they had filmed long ago and then they added it to this. This is now. But it's just part of the thing. You know what I mean? It's in the same way that you accept. If you go back and look at the old shit, we're gonna see stuff that I haven't seen those movies in years, and I know that to expect things that look fake to us.
Well, I'm thinking specifically of the rail car chase in Temple of Doom. Because I remember.
I saw that. Okay.
Yeah.
At this point, I watched this film cold.
Yeah.
Because you had said, hey, this is what I'm thinking. And I was like, no. And then you were like, no, this is what I'm thinking. And I was like, no. And then I was like, okay, that you make a good point. So then watch it cold. I watched Temple of Doom last night. I haven't seen The Last Crusade in years at this point, and I haven't seen the other one. And I remember Raiders more, and I've seen Raiders.
But also, you got to remember something too. These films have been parodied so often. They've been referenced in other things. It's no longer Indiana Jones as a story in and of itself. It's a cultural phenomenon at this point. It's iconic. It's something that sticks with us, and you're going to remember things differently than what they are. But you're also going to add things to it based on. I mean, there's a whole parody at the beginning of one of the Simpsons episodes where Bart Simpson.
I'm sure there is.
They recreate the entire beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's fucking great.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. Yeah,
I'll try to find it and I'll send you a link to it. You'll love it. It's the greatest.
Yeah, but my point being is that there's shit that we're gonna see that looks fake, but so-called, to us, oh yeah, this is so fake, but it's just one of those things that you accept.
Yeah,
you just have to. If you go back and you watch Bela Lugosi, and there's a puff of smoke, and now he's a bat, yeah, it's gonna look fucking fake. And we've talked about that, being in an actual movie theater, and all these people laugh, and you want to fucking
yeah, mass murder. I've been there.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's kind of, look, you have to just learn to accept these things as the time, and CGI is part of our time. Because now to us, it's well, that looks fake. Because we're championing the shit that to them looks fake, which is old shit. The models and all this stuff we've been talking about with 2001 and these things that people are doing with paint in their garage. But it looks beautiful.
Sure.
The whole idea of Blade Runner with the thing we're watching something actually moving through space. We've talked about this. We can see that it's a thing versus just generated. I don't know.
Well, I think a big part of it is going to be going back to those films. Yeah. It's going to stir up a lot of emotions. It's going to stir up a lot of memories and remembering where you were and what you were doing and how this affected you and, but also, the games that you played. I mean, I don't know. We played Indiana Jones. We, get some kind of piece of rope and use it as a fucking whip, and that's the magic of childhood, man. You're seeing all this shit and it's informing who you are at that time and who you'll become, and it's fun. That's ultimately what these films are great at, is that they're What's that? What happened?
I just lost you for a second.
Okay. Ultimately, watching these films is There's a certain magic of childhood. Running on top of a train, fighting somebody who's bigger than you, who overpowers you, doing these searches. I mean, there's a lot of fun. There's just there's something about adventure that grabs a hold of young men, little boys, women too, but not to the same degree. These. I mean, I know I don't want to be dismissive. There are a lot of women who love these films, but I think there's something I think there's something very. There's something that grabs a hold of the hearts and minds of young men, and makes them aspire for the Indiana Jones. I mean, I watch these films and I just laugh at both the ridiculousness of them, but also the I'm laughing at the ridiculousness, but I'm also being pulled in to the honesty of the character, because at the end of the day, he's a good man. He's a noble man. He wants to understand the past. He appreciates the past, and that's what makes the ending of this film so heartbreaking for me, is that he has an opportunity to live in the past without really understanding what that means in the moment.
Yeah, no, that would not. I mean, they already fucked up the future just by going back, but
Yeah.
him dying there would fuck it up even more.
It would, but you can understand why he wants it. He's been
Sure.
and Ford delivers that speech so beautifully, and his goddaughter Helena. That's when I really started to care for her in that moment. It's weird because it's underlying that she is better than what she is better in the film than what she's pretending to be.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, and she's the hero too, because she saves him.
She does.
It's kind of like, it's regardless of how you want to say, well, young men are going to like him or young women are going to like her and all, whatever. Like the attitude is that people are going to admire other characters in this film, regardless of who the fuck they are.
If you're open-minded about it, if you go into it with the attitude where you're like, oh, fucking chicks and this and that, then you're an asshole and you're already fucking yourself up. She's a strong character.
Also, it's like, well, and also, I mean, there have never been strong characters in film. Like, this is the first time.
Yeah.
This is like, there is no history of strong characters in cinema or in the world, or you know what I mean? Like, first fucking time. Like, what's happening? Like, forget fucking all these characters that are now popping into our minds because we actually know that's bullshit. Forget Sigourney Weaver. Forget all this other shit. Forget
Linda Hamilton.
Forget like, we can forget about the people who the women who have been marginalized in the early Hollywood industry, where there were like tons of fucking female directors that we don't remember.
Yeah.
But they were there. But to get upset because she's actually the hero, it's like, fuck you.
Yeah.
Whether she's likable or not, women don't need to be fucking likable on screen or off.
I think
characters in general don't need to be likable.
I think a lot of what
open your mind.
No, absolutely. Open your fucking mind and pay attention to what's going on. The question is a character shoehorned and used to manipulate your attitudes about a thing? If that's the case, then I can understand having a problem with the character being shoehorned into a story. But that's not the case here.
Right.
She's very organic to the material.
Yes. Like, we talked about Star Wars I think it was in episode 8. I don't remember what installment, what that one's called. But episode 8 of the Star Wars saga or whatever. There's this lesbian kiss. Remember we talked about that?
Mm-hmm.
I felt that it was pandering.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think it was necessarily woke or pro LGBTQ plus, etc. I felt that it was pandering on Disney's part because it was focused on in a way that came off to me as not normalizing or celebrating, but as a cynical way of aligning with the demographic.
Yeah.
And viewing those people as not as like this movement or this whatever. I felt it was coming from a very corporate place that was like, this is a demographic that we want to appeal to.
It was calculated. Sure.
Yeah. But there's also a difficulty when you do something like that, because if it's normal, you don't have to focus on it. You just accept it. And in a sense, you almost have to take it for granted.
Yeah.
In order to normalize. The difficulty is, okay, if you hide it, or if it seems like you're hiding it because it's too far in the background, then you get accused of sneaking it in. If you show it off, rather than saying, oh, we're celebrating, then it comes off maybe as disingenuous.
Yeah.
Which is how it came off to me. The thing is that there was nothing in it that felt like important to that story. It just felt like, oh, we're going to highlight two women kissing, which, okay. But again, highlighting two women kissing, if it's normal, then just show it. You don't have to highlight it. Just show it and we accept. Those of us who are not fucking right-wing, closed-minded, etc., asshole, etc. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
So this didn't feel to me like that. This is just a character, a strong character, smart, strong character. So, yeah, going into this with all this controversy, and actually, like, I was pleasantly surprised by this film because I didn't think that I was going to be like, oh my God, Indiana Jones, my childhood has been fulfilled as now an adult. I don't connect with the character on that sense, and I also, nor do I feel that it's like this huge. I mean, I understand the pop cultural significance, but neither do I think that it's. I don't think this character is as important, let's say, as like even like a Superman. Maybe it isn't. Maybe Star Wars is more important. I don't know. Maybe I'll change my mind tomorrow. I have no idea. But the point is that I didn't go into it thinking like this is a tower in my fucking like world. And now this next installment is going to be whatever it's going to be. So not having those expectations, and I had low expectations. I thought it was going to be horrible. And I actually wondered, are they going to make it like this person is going to take over for Indiana Jones, and yeah, she's going to be female, and they're going to make her some minority because they want to check off those boxes as a corporate, cynical way to pretend to be relevant and to make money and to pretend to be fucking advocates for inclusivity and all that. That's not what I saw. And so it was kind of like, okay, it's a pop cultural movie, and I think it did a good job for what it is.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not great, but
Well,
for what it is, it did what it did.
see, this is the thing: is like you don't think Raiders is a great film. I think it's a great film. I think it's a masterpiece. I think it's an incredible film. Um, and then I look at this film, and I knew none of the subsequent films, Temple of Doom, Last Crusade, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, none of those films surpassed Raiders. The likelihood of this film surpassing it was very slim. So lowering the expectation in that manner meant that I could go in and I could watch the movie and just enjoy it for what it was, and I did.
Yeah.
But I watched, but it's, you can't divorce yourself from the story that has come before, the character that has come before. I was just happy that they aged him appropriately. He became but he is in part Harrison Ford, a cranky, mean old man. If you watch him in interviews, he comes off that way. There's also a sense of playfulness, and he's enjoying the joke of it all, but the character is that. And if you watch the first 4 films, it's very much in keeping with that story that's being told. He is, he's kind of a miserable old man, even from the get-go, which is in keeping with my own attitudes. So it's something that really does speak to me. I love that. I love this series, and even when we get to the Crystal Skull, which I don't think is, it's definitely the weakest film in the series. There are elements of it that are on point and that I love, and I really do love the opening. I'm looking forward to us getting a chance to talk about that, because I think it's been unfairly maligned throughout the years, in the 12 or 15 years that it's been since that movie premiered. But regarding this film, I think people need to pull their heads out of their asses and stop paying attention to everything that the internet tells them, and take over again for themselves and say, you know what? I've invested 40 years of my life, or maybe this is a 40-year project. I've been watching these movies for 40 years. Just go into it and say, I'm saying goodbye to this character. And I don't know how you're going to feel about it, but I can honestly tell you without reservation that I walked out of it feeling good. I walked out of it feeling like the story came to a conclusion. I was happy for the character and the supporting characters around him. I liked the choices they made, and I think this is a damn good film. Is it a masterpiece? Is it on point with Raiders? No. But it wasn't going to do that. But this is a damn good film. And what the fuck difference to you? What the fuck difference does it make to you what it's going to do at the box office? None of that matters.
Right.
What matters is, do you walk out of it? Do you have a good time for the 2.5 hours that you're sitting there watching it? I did. I can say that without reservation. I had a really good time with it. So,
right.
That's that. That's our episode. We want to say thank you for those who have continued to listen and support us, and we want to reiterate once again, every week, please, if you like what we do, if you appreciate what I would consider, and I believe Mr. Chavez as well would consider, passionate, intelligent conversation, please support us by going to buymeacoffee.com/watch with RickRamos. Watch RickRamos.
Watch Rick. So buymeacoffee.com/watch RickRamos.
Mm-hmm. And buy us a cup of coffee. We appreciate it. It's what we do is impassioned. We love it. We need to do it for ourselves, but it's always good to be able to pay the bills.
To eat.
Yeah. Eat.
To
yeah,
eat
exactly.
And cocaine and prostitutes.
Go back to our shitty jobs and feel like this is not the end all be all of us. We thank those who have contributed up to this point, and we say thank you that they will continue to contribute, and new listeners who see some kind of value in what we do. We appreciate the support. Thank you very much. Next week we'll be back with Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then we will continue with the series and just give you our takes on it. We've had a great time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye now.